You ever notice how people talk about pregnancy like it's all glowing skin, cute cravings, baby kicks, morning sickness, discomfort? But no one talks about how it could also be the start of pure chaos. Because sometimes the hardest part of having a baby isn't the morning sickness, it's the people wanting to claim the baby as soon as it's born. In today's stories, we're going to be talking about a mother-in-law who should honestly be serving time for what she did, a husband who is so petty he turned revenge into a hobby against his pregnant wife, and another mother-in-law who hated her daughter-in-law so much that she made grief feel like a competition. Hello, friends and family. This is Megan Moon, aka 저는 미국 사람입니다. So pregnancy is supposed to be a blessing, right? But when in-laws and family get involved, sometimes that blessing turns into a battlefield. So grab your snacks and your hot beverages and take a seat because the drama is delicious. Now let's get into the first story. It's called Her Hands on My Child. This story was submitted by Mrs. Kim, and she says, I live in Seoul, I'm 31 years old, and though I can speak calmly now, just a few months ago, I thought my life was about to fall apart. Marriage, childbirth, motherhood. These are words that sound warm and sacred, but they had turned into something cold and suffocating. When I first found out I was pregnant, the world seemed full of light. I saw 2 bright lines on the pregnancy test and my heart was fluttering. My hands were shaking as I ran to my husband. He hugged me and whispered, "You'll go through a lot, but I'll help you." In that moment, I believed we were stepping together into a bright future. Then, when I told my mother-in-law, she smiled a bit too quickly and a bit too brightly. "This is my grandchild. Don't worry, I'll take care of everything for you." But Mrs. Kim said every time she said, "내 손주," which means my grandchild, I felt a small knot form inside me, a knot I kept pretending not to feel. At first, her visits felt caring. She brought food, herbs, unsolicited advice, but soon the kindness turned into rules. 카페인 절대 안 돼. Do not drink any caffeine ever. Oh God, I hate unsolicited advice when you're pregnant, especially in Korea where people in general in society are more nosy. Koreans are particularly invested in other people. So if you're out and about and there's something that seems like it's a problem, somebody will tell you that it's a problem. That's why a lot of people live their life like sort of anxious about judgment from others because people are always looking and waiting for them to be able to say something to you. So you guys know me, before I had babies, I was a bodybuilder. And I was already very strong. So obviously when you're pregnant, you're going to keep working out, right? It's not good to like be an athlete and then get pregnant and then stop working out. Like whatever fitness level you had, it's good to sort of maintain that to a certain degree. So every day at the gym, the same people who's been seeing me for years would be like, "Are you sure you should be doing that? Are you sure?" Every day. I'm like, the stress that you're giving me from asking me if I should be doing this is more harmful to my baby than me doing some deadlifts. Stop stressing me out. But anyway, back to Mrs. Kim's story. More things that her mother-in-law would say to her. This food has a cold nature. It's bad for pregnant women. So this, I probably have to explain a little bit. So in Korea, certain things have certain properties. Like there's hot foods and cold foods. I don't mean like temperature-wise or like spicy or not, but some foods are known to warm the body, like things like ginger, for example, garlic. Those are things that warm the body. And there's certain foods that have a cold nature. It might be like a cucumber, or just foods that cool the body down. And if you're pregnant, you're not supposed to eat foods that cool the body down because it's gonna cool your womb and stuff. Look, people, if I wanna eat a cucumber, even though I'm slightly allergic to them, I will have some. I want pickles, right? Her mother-in-law would also say stuff like, "You should move your hospital closer to my house so that way I can come and help you." Mrs. Kim says she meant to help, but her help sort of erased me and my choices and my decisions. And when I told my husband that all of her interference made me a bit uncomfortable, he only said, "엄마가 도와주시는 건데 뭐가 문제야? My mom's just helping. What's the problem?" See, that's where you're messing up, Mr. Kim. Doesn't matter the mom's intention. Your wife is uncomfortable and she's pregnant, so you got to put a stop to that, Mr. Kim. You're failing at your job. By the 5th month, my mother-in-law started coming to every doctor's appointment. When she was there, she would answer my doctor before I could even. I felt like I was just a body for her grandchild. Oh, girl, you really got to speak up and be like, this is not your baby. I understand, like, when people in the family have babies, a lot of people feel like this baby is my baby too, and they get really excited. That's just a natural thing. But in these cases, we really have to find your voice and really be able to speak up about it. I know it's hard, but you just gotta do it. The pain and discomfort of speaking up in the moment will save you so much more pain down the line. As my due date approached, my mother-in-law actually moved closer to us. If you don't want them to move close to you and they moving close to you, now we're getting into the hardcore boundaries, right? So Mrs. Kim said she visited daily and she quietly took over everything, the nursery, the clothes, even the hospital bag. I had a hospital bag all packed and ready and she went there, took everything out and was like, nope, 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 and then repacked it as she thought fit. But Mrs. Kim said, I was too tired to fight anymore at that time. I just, whatever she wants. Mrs. Kim said labor came early, around 3 in the morning, as everything hormonal does. But Mrs. Kim said, before we left the house, my phone rang. It was my mother-in-law. She already knew. Your labor started? I'll come right now. Oh, see, now that means that the husband told her already. Just stop telling her everything right away. But Mrs. Kim said in the car between contractions, my mother-in-law would say, we'll meet our grandchild soon. I'm going to be the first one to hold him. But Mrs. Kim said after 12 hours of agony, they chose a C-section. After the C-section, I remember the cry of my baby and then blackness that put her under to like suture her up and stuff. She says, when I woke up later, I asked, 내 아기 어디 있어요? My baby, where's my baby? The nurse said that the baby was in the nursery. So I waited for an hour, then 2 hours, then another nurse entered and she was visibly worried and she said, 혹시 아기를 누가 데려가셨나요? Has someone taken your baby? My heart stopped. So I called my husband and there was no answer. I called him again, nothing. Then I called my mother-in-law. The number you have dialed is turned off. I called them over and no one picked up. So the staff rushed to check the CCTV. They said it would take about 10 minutes for them to check, but that 10 minutes felt like an eternity. When the head nurse came back, her face looked pale. At 5:27 p.m., your mother-in-law spoke to her nurse in the nursery hallway. While the nurse stepped away temporarily, she entered the nursery, picked up the baby, and left the hospital. So the doctor asked quietly, 경찰에 신고할까요? Shall we report this to the police? She needs to be reported to the police because that is a criminal offense. Like, you can't do that. First of all, it is kidnapping, whether it's your grandkid or not. And also, it's an offense to take a child from a hospital like that without the permission from the hospital and from the parents, etc. But Mrs. Kim said she was shaking and she said, no, let me call my husband first because I didn't want to make his mother a criminal. You not making her a criminal. She is a criminal. The reasons why she's acting like that is because she hasn't had to feel the consequences of her actions because your husband just allows her to do everything. People like this need to feel consequences for their actions so that they realize, oh, I shouldn't act like this. Throw her in jail. Mrs. Kim said, I just wanted my baby back. But after what felt like forever, my husband finally picked up the phone when I called. And here's the thing. First of all, she just had a C-section. Her husband should be right there. Where is he? So anyway, Mrs. Kim said she told him everything. So then he called his mother and mother-in-law picked up for him. So then he called her back and said, oh, my mom just took him for a bit. She said she'll bring him back soon. 2 hours later, he returned with the baby. I held my son for the first time. He was warm, tiny, and perfect. But then I noticed that there was powdered milk on his lips. Did your mother feed him formula? Yeah, he was crying, so she said she fed him a little formula. And then my heart broke because my mother-in-law had stolen more than my child's first cry. She had stolen our first bond. The first time mother and baby gets together and breastfeeds, that's the first bond. It's very important, especially if you plan on breastfeeding. Mrs. Kim says that night I couldn't sleep. Every time a nurse took the baby for a check, I begged, please bring him back quickly. I think in a case like this, it shouldn't be up to the mom to decide if she wants to call the police. I think the hospital should have an automatic policy where anybody who takes a baby, they're going to call the police themselves, whether that person wants to press charges or not. But at the hospital, the next day, my mother-in-law came with flowers. She said, 미안하다. 너무 귀여워서 참을 수가 없었어. I'm sorry. He was so cute, I just couldn't help myself. No, see, that's selfish. Like, regardless of how cute a child is, it's never a good thing to move a baby from the hospital when it's born and not give it the opportunity to bond with its mother and have breastfeeding. That's what's good for the baby. So you've just shown how selfish you are. Like, it's about what I want to do. I want to have this first meeting with the baby. I don't care about the baby's health or the well-being of the mom or anything. Like, that's, ooh, no. Throw her away. So when they left the hospital at home, Mrs. Kim said she refused her mother-in-law's calls. But then her husband would chime in and say, aren't you being a little bit too harsh? 너무 심한 거 아니야? Your mom stole a baby from the hospital. She's crazy. Not answering her calls or accepting her gift, I think, is an acceptable reaction to that, you know? So weeks passed, feeding, changing, rocking. Then one morning when my husband and baby were asleep, I went out to the store, but I was checking the home CCTV on my phone. I just was out briefly to go to the store. My mom-in-law used her spare key. She snuck into the house and lifted the baby. He cried, and so she shook him to try and get him to stop crying, but she shook him a little bit too hard, and then she had an empty bottle with her that she brought and tried to feed the baby, the empty bottle. She said at that point in time, she understood. She wasn't there to help. She just wanted to own the baby. She wanted to erase me until only her and her sonju, her grandson, remained. Now, that would scare me. That would be like immediate restraining order, because if she knew just the moment when you slipped out, she came, that means that she was like standing around your house. Then she ends by saying, later that night, I picked up my son and I said, Mommy will protect you. Motherhood, I learned, isn't just about giving life. It's about protecting the space where your voice lives. Even if you have to stand alone inside their silence, if you're listening and you feel unseen, if you've been told that love means obedience, remember this: you are not invisible. You are not anyone's vessel. You are the mother. But I don't know, what do you guys think? What would you do in this situation? What do you think? Would you have called the police or would you have let it slide? What do you think about this? Let me know down below. So let's move on to story 2, which is called The Price of Waiting with a Petty Husband. Okay. This story, we'll say, was sent by Mrs. Lee, and she said it was late again that night when she got home from work. Her husband said, 오늘 많이 늦었네? You're home late again? So then I replied, yeah, work's been insane lately. I am so exhausted. Then my husband looked up and said quietly, 근데 여보, 오늘 수요일인 거 알지? Honey, do you know today's Wednesday? Then Mrs. Lee said, that's right, Wednesday. That means it's my turn to do the dishes. But I'm too tired today. I got home super late from work. Can we just switch just for today? She said her husband frowned. You can't just change things because you're tired. How long do dishes even take? Keeping small promises like this is what matters in the relationship. So Mrs. Kim said, I sighed. 알았어. 내가 할게. Fine, I'll do the dishes now. Oh, see, that's too much. Like, if he was home early, I do think in relationships, we do need to have a schedule. Like, on this day, you do this chore. On that day, you do this chore. But I do think they need to be flexible based on circumstance. Like, if somebody's working super late at night, for you to just sit at home for hours and then they come home and you say, it's your turn to do the dishes, I think that's a bit immature. Already, I'm not liking this man. So Mrs. Lee says, I'm 31, we've been married for 3 years, and my husband believes everything in life must balance perfectly. It must be perfectly calculated. A favor for a favor. A fault for a fault. At first, I thought that meant he was responsible. But Mrs. Lee said, but after marriage, I realized logic can also wound. He treated every moment like a transaction, even love. Obviously, give and take is a good thing, but it can't be too calculated. Especially in a marriage, there are going to be times where you're giving more, and then there are going to be times where you need to receive more. Like, what if you get sick? He's still going to say, well, I don't care that you have the flu. You need to do the dishes today because it's your time. But Mrs. Lee said, still, he was consistent and reliable, so I told myself, that's enough for me. Because I guess he's always going to do his part, right? But Mrs. Lee said, when we finally found out that we were expecting after years of waiting, I believed everything would change. Girl, babies do not change anything. They bring to light all the cracks that the relationship had. It's like if you have a vase that has cracks in it. If there's no water in it, then the cracks don't really mean much. But when you put that water in there, the water's going to start flowing between the cracks. You really see how important those cracks are. You have to mend the cracks in order to be stable, right, in the foundation. But Mrs. Lee said pregnancy made me unbearably tired. At work, I'd find myself dozing off mid-sentence. So my coworkers would say, "Oh, Mrs. Lee, you must be exhausted from the pregnancy. This is normal. Go take a break." She says, "I was grateful for my coworkers' kindness." Oh, that's good. Mrs. Lee said, "I slept more than ever before, sometimes without even realizing it. Girl, the pregnancy sleeps. They will get you." Like literally, it was like that for me. I'm someone who it took me a while to go to sleep before, but then when I was pregnant, I literally could sit down and just fall asleep. Mrs. Lee said, "One day I got home early on a day that we had a prenatal appointment scheduled. So I was waiting at home for my husband to pick me up. So I called him and said, 'Hey, where are you?' And he said, 'Oh, I'll be there in 10 minutes. I'll call you when I'm downstairs.' So Mrs. Lee said, I sat down for just a moment on the sofa, but then fell asleep. I woke up and saw that there were 10 missed calls. So I sort of woke up in a panic. I called my husband and I said, 'I'm so sorry. I fell asleep without realizing it.' And her husband said, 'I waited 30 minutes because of you.' Mrs. Lee said, 'I'm so sorry. I can't control falling asleep lately.' But her husband just exhaled sharply. 'Fine. Let's just calm down and go see the baby.' I don't understand why he would wait downstairs. Like, it's your own house. If she wasn't answering your calls, the logical thing to do would be to go upstairs, especially if you know she's been falling asleep. What are you doing waiting for 30 minutes? It's not her fault you waited 30 minutes. It's your fault you waited 30 minutes because you didn't have enough sense to walk upstairs and figure out what was happening." Mrs. Lee said, "A few weeks later, I caught a cold. My whole body ached. I was anxious, tired, and I was having some spotting down below. It was enough to make me a little bit anxious, but not enough to cause a big alarm." I don't know how you're so cool about it. When I had any kind of spotting, I immediately panicked and went to the doctor. She told her husband that she was sick, and so he called after work and said, "Hey, since you're sick, let's eat something warm. How about we have some juke? I'll pick you up and we can go have juke together." So in Korea, juke is like a rice porridge. I guess a lot of people would know it as like kanji. The kanji, I don't know, I'm not Japanese, but the Japanese word is kangi or kanji. But in Korean, it's called juk, the rice porridge. Anyway, so she went downstairs, but her husband wasn't there. So she called, "Hey, babe, I'm downstairs. Where are you?" So my husband said, "Traffic's so bad, I won't be able to make it soon. How about you go ahead and go to the porridge shop? Here's the address. Meet me here." The porridge shop wasn't too bad of a walk, so I decided to just walk there. It was quite cold, but it was bearable. So I walked to the porridge shop, but the porridge shop was closed. So I called my husband and I said, "Honey, the porridge shop is closed." And he said, "Okay, you know what? Just wait there. I'll be about 5 minutes and I'll come get you." 5 minutes passed, then 10 minutes. Then 15. She said, my vision started blurring and the world started tilting. So I called my husband back and I said, "Honey, how long are you going to be? I'm suddenly so dizzy," because remember, she was sick and she was having some spotting. She's like, "I'm so dizzy and I can't breathe properly. Please get here quickly." But her husband said, "Just one more minute. Just wait, just one more minute." But Mrs. Lee felt so dizzy. She said, "I can't even stand anymore. Like I'm about to pass out." I don't know if you've ever been about to pass out, but it feels like darkness is closing on you and you're about to like tilt over. Like it's not a situation that you can just wait, because also there's a fear of falling down. So she said, "I can't wait anymore. I'm going to take a taxi." But then her husband's voice got sharp and angry and he said, "Why are you so inconsiderate? Even if you're pregnant, you're so inconsiderate. Just wait 1 minute. I changed my route so I could come pick you up and now you can't even wait 1 minute? Last time, you made me wait 30 minutes. You can't even wait 1 minute?" Then right then, there was a taxi in front of me, so I waved desperately, and the driver saw my pale face, and he opened the door immediately. I barely managed to get in, but I said, "Please, can you take me to the hospital?" Halfway there, as she was sort of dizzy and in and out of consciousness, she said, my phone buzzed again. She picked it up. His voice came through. He was cold and furious and said, "I saw you take the taxi. You couldn't even wait 20 minutes outside for me? That one time you made me wait half an hour for you downstairs, and now you can't even wait 1 extra minute? That's not fair. You only think of yourself. You're selfish." And then while she was on the phone, everything went dark. She said, when I opened my eyes, I was in the hospital. And the doctor was there, and I said, "Doctor, is my baby okay?" He looked down and said, "죄송합니다. I'm so sorry, ma'am, but you lost the baby." Aww. She said the words echoed like thunder. The taxi driver had actually called 119 for her, so the paramedics came to pick her up, but it was too late. She had lost the baby, and she said she lost a part of herself with it. Like, her husband, what is he doing? Making your pregnant wife walk in the cold when you know she's already feeling sick, to go to a porridge place 10 minutes away, and then from there make her wait 15 minutes. I think he was probably trying to get her to wait the full 30 minutes. But the thing is he didn't have to wait that 30 minutes. He could have went upstairs. It is not like she didn't come down because she's doing her hair, or just taking too long to get ready. She literally fell asleep because she's pregnant. So Mrs. Kim said she went to her parents' house. She said, the next morning, I was at my parents' house. My mother was trying not to cry, where I could see she would go into other places to cry, and I could hear her sob quietly through the door sometimes. It was a sound I'll never forget. But Mrs. Lee said, the next day my husband came to my parents' house, and she said, I thought maybe he would finally apologize, but he didn't. When he was at the door, my father confronted him, and he told my father, your daughter made me wait 30 minutes one time. I was only trying to make her wait the same, so she would understand how it is to make someone wait for 30 minutes. My father's face went pale. 그거 사람 말이야? 임신한 아내한테 그렇게까지 해야 한다고? Do you hear yourself? Are you even a person? This was your wife. She was pregnant. Is this what you do to your pregnant wife? And the husband said, I only acted fairly. I lost my child too, but it's not my fault. She said, my father shouted. His voice was shaking. You lost your child and wife, and you still talk like that. He said, leave and divorce her now. And my husband said calmly, I will not divorce her. This happened because of her. She should take responsibility. Responsibility for what? Because you didn't go upstairs to go get her? You're too dumb and you sat downstairs and you wanted to say, how long is she gonna make me wait? How long is she gonna make me wait? Isn't it common courtesy when you go pick up a lady anyway to go up to the door and get her from the door? Especially if she's pregnant. But that's not even the worst part, because she said later I learned that he had actually followed me that night. He watched me walk to the porridge shop. He knew that the porridge shop was closed, and he waited deliberately just to teach me a lesson. Oh my God. How does he not realize that he's also waiting again? If he's sitting and watching her, that means he's also waiting 30 minutes again, so that you can make her wait. You're waiting so you can make her wait because you're mad that she made you wait. Well, you didn't even have to wait before. You could have just went upstairs and got throw the whole man away. Throw him away. But Mrs. Lee said that's when the last piece of love inside me died. So I filed for divorce. She said the hearings were long and brutal, but he never once said, I'm sorry, only that he was being fair. But I won the settlement, obviously. So I walked out of the courthouse free, wounded, but free. She said, years have passed, and now I have a husband who holds me, not measures me. I have a home filled with warmth, not rules, and I have a little girl whose laughter fills the air. And she says, I finally am happy. Well, I'm glad everything turned out okay. I can't even imagine the trauma that someone goes through in a miscarriage. Whew, what do you guys think of that story? Isn't that insane? Do you know people who are that petty and that out of touch with reality? I hope that you don't, but if you do and you want to tell us the story down below, let's take a look. So let's move on to the final story, the third story, which is called The Bitterness Left Behind. This was sent by Mrs. Kim. She says, I'm a woman in my 30s. I've been married for 5 years, and at 5 weeks pregnant, morning sickness began, and it did not stop. By 20 weeks, I thought it was over, but suddenly even water made me vomit. So Mrs. Kim said, my throat felt scraped raw, my lips cracked, and the smell of rice boiling even made my stomach twist up in a knot. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep. I basically had to live on IV drips from the hospital and hope. She says, my mother started coming every day. It takes her an hour commute each way, an hour to my house and an hour back. And she does all that even though she has cancer. My mom would appear in the doorway with a paper bag of soup and side dishes, but her thin wrists were trembling from the weight because her body had become frail. So Mrs. Kim said she would often tell her mom, I told you not to come. Don't you ever think about your own health? But my mom would say, my daughter can't even eat. Of course I have to come and do something. But each visit, she quietly washed dishes, tidied the laundry, and left packed food for my husband to eat. Marinated beef, rolled omelets, spinach seasoned with sesame oil. That's the best kind of spinach right there. She said the house always smelled like home again after she left. One afternoon, the doorbell rang unexpectedly. It was my mother-in-law. At the doorway, she came face to face with my mother. The air froze between them. One woman was pale from illness, and the other was rigid with pride. My mom-in-law said to my mom, I heard you were sick with cancer. Should you really be walking around like this? My mom answered. I can still manage. Their voices were polite, but the temperature in the hallway dropped 10 degrees because you could feel the coldness between them. My mother left quietly, her slippers barely making a sound on the floor. As soon as the door shut, my mother-in-law looked around, sniffing the air like something offended her. Why is that woman coming in and out of my son's house? It feels dirty. Oh no. They don't let her talk about your mom like that. I'd be like, and when you come in, it don't smell dirty. Anyway. Maybe I'm too confrontational. But my mother-in-law opened my refrigerator without asking. She rummaged through the containers until she found my mother's food. The jars clicked sharply against one another. These are the side dishes that your mother brought? Throw them out. They make me uncomfortable. But I just froze there as she dumped each one of the containers of food my mom bought into the trash. The scent of sesame oil and garlic filled the air before disappearing into the sour smell of waste in the food waste bag. But then my mom-in-law goes on to say, never feed my son anything your mother cooks. So I said, real? Why? She said, what if my son gets sick from it? Your mom got sick for a reason, you know. Food can contribute to illnesses like that. She left with a huff. Her perfume mingled with the sour smell of the garbage can. Moments later, the doorbell rang again. My mother had come back because she'd forgotten her phone. But she heard everything. She didn't say a word. She simply placed a small envelope on the table, filled with money, and she said, use this to buy some more food and please take care of yourself. Then she left again. As her illness worsened, I told my husband, Mom's not doing well. I want to go see her. He didn't even look up from his phone. He said, 친정에 가면 안 돼. You can't go. You're carrying our precious baby. You can't expose it to your mother's sickness. She has cancer. She doesn't have anything contagious. Like, maybe if she had, I don't know, COVID, yeah, but cancer is not contagious. But she says, next he said it, the line that still haunts me to this day. Also, just in case if she dies, don't go to the funeral. Just how can you be so nonchalant about your partner's parent dying and then telling her she can't go? I stared at him, thinking he must be joking, but he wasn't. When I argued back, he said calmly, even if it sounds harsh, I'm saying it for your good. Take it seriously. She says, that night I couldn't sleep. The house was silent except for the faint hum of the fridge where my mother's food used to be. The next day, my mother came again. She was thinner than ever. Her scarf couldn't hide how much weight she had lost. And once again, my mother-in-law arrived at the same time. The air between them burned cold. Then I confronted my mother-in-law. She burst into tears. Oh, raising children means nothing these days. 자식 새끼 키워봤자 소용없어. A lot of Korean moms say that apparently, like if you don't do with what they want, they say, oh, what was the point of raising kids? Like if you're not going to do what I say, I guess. But her crying was loud and practiced. It was the kind of crying that demands comfort. So of course, my husband went to her side immediately, murmuring soft words to her while she wept onto his shoulder. But Mrs. Kim said watching them was horrible, and I felt like a ghost inside of my own house. She said when my baby was born, my mother-in-law rejoiced like it was her personal triumph. And of course, my mother came too. She was frail, but radiant and smiling through her pain. My mom said, my grandchild, grow strong and healthy. But my mother-in-law frowned and whispered that my mother's presence brought bad luck. Like to her face. That's horrible. A few months later, my mother passed away. The world tilted. Grief and anger pressed into my ribs, and my mother-in-law said without hesitation, don't go to your mom's funeral. Your baby is still small. What if you bring disease back? Surely your family will understand if you don't go. Like in Korea, a lot of times they believe funerals bring bad luck on people, but typically they just throw salt at you. Like when I was pregnant, I went to one of our family members' funerals. And so everybody brought salt and like red pepper. And apparently if they throw salt on you and throw salt on your car tires, then the evil spirits can't follow you back. Like it's a very simple solution. Bring salt and throw it at them. If that's the stuff that you believe, you know, there's a solution. Salt. So Mrs. Kim didn't answer. She just put on her coat and then went to the funeral. But she said as she walked out, my mom-in-law shouted curses behind me that echoed down the stairwell. She said she spent 3 days at the funeral, kneeling beside her father, saying goodbye to the mom, greeting the guests, getting the envelopes of money, taking care of the ledger. She said her husband did go with her, but he stayed silent because he was unsure of which side to take. She said her mother-in-law never came to the funeral. She didn't call, she didn't even send flowers, didn't offer any sort of condolences. She only said a few days after the funeral when I was crying at home that, Your mom died when it was her time to die. Stop crying. You're ruining the mood of the house. She said these words lodged in me like glass. Then years passed. Life became quieter, but definitely not lighter. Then came another phone call. My mother-in-law had been diagnosed with stomach cancer. I, of course, didn't go to see her. And people in the family started calling me and saying, your mother-in-law is gravely ill. Aren't you even going to see her? She said, I just stayed silent. The next day, my mother-in-law called again. Her voice was frail, but demanding. Bring the baby to my house tomorrow. I need to see my grandchild. Seeing my grandchild will give me strength. You'll come, right? Mrs. Kim said softly, I'll let you see him later, sometime later. My mom-in-law said, when later? I said, when you're healthy. That's when. Oh! Her voice cracked. What did you just say? I answered calmly. Those were your own words to my late mother. Have you forgotten already? And then I hung up the phone. Yes, girl. She said from that day on, I never went back to see them. Wow, that's a horrible situation. I'm kind of surprised that you're still there, but I guess it's because you figured out ways to set up boundaries and whatnot. She didn't say, but it sounds like her husband started to take her side because he was there at the funeral with her and he stopped sort of interfering with her and the mom. So fingers crossed that everything's going well with Mrs. Kim. But I don't know. What do you guys think? Would you guys have brought your kid to see her when she was sick? I think I might have once because remember, Mrs. Kim still went and saw her mom, right? I think in that sense, if somebody's going to die, I'm a bit soft in that way. Like, I don't want people to go out without seeing their grandkids or family members or whatever. So I think I probably would have brought her, but just once. This is your last time to see your grandkid. Like, don't expect to see him anymore because you're not nice. But I think I would have brought them maybe once. So at least if she does pass away, that she could have seen them one more time, you know? I guess like death and stuff is something that I don't take very lightly, and I don't think it's cause for revenge on people. But I don't know. What do you guys think? But woo, these 3 stories surrounding pregnancy were insane. Pregnancy brings out a lot of things, the hormones, the cravings, the emotions. But apparently it also brings out people's true colors. It's wild how something meant to be a blessing can turn into a test of survival, especially when family decides to play the villain instead of support. But this is all that I have for you guys today. Let me know what you think about it down in the comments. Share your opinions. If you have any stories you want to share, if you need some support or encouragement, let us know down below and everyone will rush in to support and encourage you. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Just remember, if you're in a situation that's horrible, set up your boundaries. If it's a situation that you need to get out of it. If you can get therapy, get therapy. If you can do couples therapy, get couples therapy. But you can take control of your life. Make sure you surround yourself with people who are positive, who can positively influence you, who understand you, who you can have healthy relationships with, because that really makes all the difference in life and with your level of happiness, etc. You can take control of your life. You got this, girl. So I just want to thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you like this video and you'd like to see more videos, please subscribe to my user page, which is down below. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, like me on Facebook, and I will see ya.